will the Islamic State become a threat to additional nations? Once again, that's, will the Islamic State become a threat to additional nations?
Oh, you're fine. We're good.
I'll give you 5 down, 30, push it 7, you have a 30.
Okay, sounds good. The United States might have finally found a terrorist organization more extremist than Al-Qaeda, ISIS. In fact, ISIS used to be a faction of Al-Qaeda until Al-Qaeda told them that they were too radical and too extreme to be part of their organization. And at the point where when you know that Al-Qaeda is telling you you're too extreme, you're doing something wrong. But despite this extremism, ISIS has been extremely successful in capturing large swaths of territory across Iraq and Syria. As a Wall Street Journal article explains on September 11th of 2014, that ISIS has a clear goal of setting up an Islamic State. And President Obama and the rest of the international community has responded in turn by setting up an international coalition to try to fight against this Islamic State. But because this Islamic State poses the greatest terror threat, not only to the United States, but to the entire world, it is absolutely essential that we ask ourselves today's question. Will ISIS pose a threat to additional nations? And the answer, sadly, is a clear yes, for 3 key reasons. First, because of the organization of ISIS. Second, because of recruitment through social media. But finally, because of the lackluster success of the coalition. The first reason why ISIS and the Islamic State, rather, is going to pose an additional threat to other nations is because of their organization. In the past, terrorist groups such as Al-Qaeda have been extremely decentralized. As a Council on Foreign Relations article explains on October 10th of 2014, that this decentralization was one of the major reasons why this Islamic State was formed in the first place. But ICE, or as the Islamic State, is going to continue to move forward in the future through these centralized practices. As Defense One explains on December 7th of 2014, that ISIS has a clear president, President Baghdadi, and through this centralization, he has the ability to move ISIS forward in one communal goal. The localities don't matter. ISIS, while it has the ability to put many fighters across the Middle East, it also has the ability to unite under one goal. And this is also made true through their oil revenues. In that aforementioned Council on Foreign Relations article, it explains that ISIS has the central organization to successfully distribute and pay all of their workers. In fact, as The Hill explains on September 6th of 2014, that ISIS has around 21,000 to 30,000 fighters right now in the Middle East. What this does is it poses a long-term threat to conventional militaries. While the United States might have been able to smash Al-Qaeda in a fair fight, when it comes to stepping up against ISIS through conventional militaries like Turkey or Israel, they simply don't have the manpower to even try to stand up to this terrorist organization. And it's because of their central organization that allows them to do this. The second reason why ISIS is going to pose a threat to additional nations is because of their recruitment through social media. This type of terrorist threat no longer is a regional issue. It is now affecting countries all across the world. In that aforementioned Defense One article on September 7th of 2014, that the NSA, the FBI, and the CIA were all caught off guard by the rise of ISIS. While the NSA might have a lot of information on what text you sent last night, they don't necessarily know who's recruiting online. And what this led to, as a Washington Post article explains on September 7th of 2014, was an arrest of a New York resident who was trying to recruit ISIS fighters successfully and send them to the Middle East through Turkey. But on top of that, he was also setting up attacks here on U.S. soil. ISIS knows that by committing attacks against Western countries, they have the ability to promote their cause. Meaning that the threat isn't just to countries like Turkey or the Israel that directly border ISIS. In fact, the threat is a global one. And it's all because of recruitment through social media that has allowed this globalization of terrorist organizations. The third and final reason why ISIS poses a threat to additional nations is because of their ability to recruit people. Right now, ISIS is extremely successful when it comes to advancing their cause. In fact, when it comes to paying people and through social media, ISIS has been extremely successful when it comes to comparing with Al-Qaeda or past terrorist organizations. But another thing that ISIS has done extremely well is the ability to respond to the coalition of nations that is set to fight ISIS. As a New York Times article explains on September 16th of 2014, that the coalition looking to fight ISIS right now has been doing a lackluster job because of their reliance on air support. As a foreign policy article explains on October 1st of 2014, while air support might be good for conquering a region temporarily, the problem is that once this region is conquered, ISIS fighters simply move back in. The coalition doesn't have a stable ground support in order to secure territory after they've gotten it. And this was shown severely when it came to ISIS attacking the border city of Kobane. As a Wall Street Journal article explains on September 16th of 2014, that ISIS fighters had the ability to capture the city of Kobane between Iraq and Syria, but it's also bordering Turkey. The coalition doesn't have the ability to set a successful buffer zone between Iraq and Syria and Turkey. And without this buffer zone, ISIS is going to continue to snowball until it threatens conventional militaries like Turkey's. Because ISIS poses a threat, not only to Middle Eastern countries, but countries all across the world, it was absolutely essential that we asked ourselves today's question. Is ISIS going to pose a threat to additional countries? And sadly, the answer was a clear yes for three key reasons. First, because of their organization. Second, because of social media recruitment. But finally, because of the lackluster success of the coalition. So while ISIS might be extremist in their beliefs, it's clear that the Western countries have to come down to reality in order to face ISIS. And unless we respond to this threat today, it's clear that ISIS is going to continue to snowball as a global threat in the future.